Today, we are opening up the file on one of the most painful, chaotic, and politically charged seasons in European sports history, the immediate aftermath of the Spanish Civil War.
It's incredible to think that right before the war, Spanish football was genuinely on the rise. They were having spectacular moments.
Oh yeah, like beating England 4-3 in 1929, that was huge.
Huge. And they had an amazing showing at the 1934 World Cup. They were really building something, a proper continental power.
But then, in July 1936, the country it erupts, and the competition is suspended for 3 agonizing years.
And when the war finally ends in 39, the scramble to restart everything, life, infrastructure, and yes, football was just intense.
And deeply political.
Oh, it's not a fresh start, not at all. Our sources show the return of football was part of this bigger, deliberate strategy by the new regime to sort of force a sense of normalization.
Right, to project stability.
Exactly. The war had just sliced through every single part of Spanish life, and the league's return was an attempt to exert control. The season we're looking at, the 1939-40 campaign, ran from December 3rd, 1939 to April 28th, 1940.
So our mission today is to explore that season, technically the 9th season of La Liga, and really analyze how the conflict's immediate aftermath defined everything. We're talking damaged stadiums, exiled players, forced political rebrandings.
And it all leads to a champion that, if you look at the sporting results from 3 years before, shouldn't have even been in the league.
Okay, let's unpack this. The entire season was basically a politically engineered comeback. Let's start with the statistics, because they tell a story of just sheer chaos right away.
They really do.
Across 132 matches, there were 501 goals scored. That's an average of 3.8 goals per match. I mean, it was an explosive season.
It was, but you have to think about what that number actually means. It's not just exciting football. It's a reflection of, well, of physical and technical deterioration.
So he's saying the players just weren't in shape.
I mean, think about it. Many had fought in the war. Others were displaced or had suffered from malnutrition. Proper training, fitness, it was non-existent for years.
So that high-scoring average is actually more about poor defense and volatile tactics than it is about world-class attacking.
Precisely. Teams were thrown together. Defenses were completely disorganized because the players lacked conditioning. The matches just became these wide-open, unpredictable affairs.
You can see it in some of the crazy results. Athletic Bilbao beating Barcelona 7-5.
A 12-goal thriller. It just suggests both teams were running on empty by the end.
And Sevilla, the biggest home win, right? Crushing Racing Santander 8-2. The instability was just palpable.
It was. But amid all that, you still had individual talent shining through.
Victorio Unamuno for Athletic Bilbao. He gets the Pichichi top goal scorer with 20 goals. It's kind of amazing that any sort of individual consistency was possible that quickly.
It is, but the chaos, it went beyond the pitch and into the rules themselves. Relegation was handled differently this year.
The playoff?
Yep. The 10th placed team, Celta, had to face the Segunda Division runner-up, Deportivo La Coruña, in a one-off game.
At a neutral venue.
Yeah.
And Celta won 1-0, so they stayed up.
They did. But that whole system was needed because of the most serious logistical scar of the war.
Yeah.
The situation with Oviedo.
Their stadium, the Estadio Buenavista, was so badly damaged from siege warfare, they just couldn't play. Physically
Incapable of hosting matches, so the Spanish Football Federation had to make a political guarantee.
Oviedo was promised a spot in the next season, the 1940-41 season.
Exactly. But that left a vacant spot for this season, a hole in the table.
And that logistical hole, that's the key. It became the key to the entire season's central surprise. So we have a vacant spot. We have this desperate need to restart the league. And that vacant spot gets filled by a club that had actually been relegated in the last official season.
Athletic Madrid.
They go from the second division to winning the 1939-40 title, their first ever La Liga championship.
They absolutely should not have been there. I mean, based on any pre-war sporting standard, this is where the new regime's influence becomes impossible to ignore.
So walk us through it. How does a relegated team manage to not just get back in, but win the whole thing?
It was a political rescue operation, really, but it was disguised as a merger.
A merger?
Yeah. Athletic Madrid, which was financially ruined, changed its name to Athletic Aviation. They did this by merging with Aviation Nacional,
which was a team founded during the war by nationalist military personnel. The Air Force, specifically.
That's the one. So the debt-ridden football club emerges with the politically powerful military branch.
And that gave the football club the political cover and financial security it needed.
It did, and in return, it gave the military team instant high-level sporting status. It was the perfect vehicle for them to occupy Oviedo's vacant spot, completely bypassing their relegation.
But they still had to fight for that spot, didn't they? Not from a football rival, but another political claim.
That's right. Osasuna, which had finished last in 35-36, protested. They argued they should get the spot based on the, and I'm quoting here, heroic behavior of Navarran troops during the war.
Wow, so sporting merit was just out the window. It was all about military and political claims.
Completely. Atlético Aviación won the playoff against them and secured their place.
And our sources suggest this wasn't just about getting a spot. This merger made them the de facto team of the regime in those first few years. Did anyone else protest this blatant favoritism?
Officially, it was just framed as a necessary step to get the league restarted. But unofficially, everyone knew what was happening. The sources are pretty clear. Atlético Aviación became a privileged club overnight.
They had their buses and fuel paid for by the army, right?
Yep. They went from owing over 1 million pesetas, according to one source, to being the most financially secure club in Spain, almost literally overnight.
And their stadium situation was just as makeshift.
Right. They couldn't use their own damaged stadium, the Metropolitano. So for this championship season, they played their home games at Estadio Chamartín,
Real Madrid's ground.
Real Madrid's ground, plus one game at Vallecas. The whole thing was provisional, subsidized, and politically engineered for a team that literally represented the new military power.
Okay, so we've seen the chaotic restart. But to really get the political stakes, we have to look at the years where the league didn't exist nationally.
That's the crucial context.
The football never really stopped during the war. It fractured. And the results from those wartime leagues were systematically erased.
That's it. In the Republican strongholds, so mainly Valencia and Catalonia, they organized their own competitions. You had La Liga de Mediterráneo and La Copa de la España Libre, the Free Spain Cup.
Barcelona won that Mediterranean League.
Yeah.
And these were basically acts of defiance, right? Attempts to maintain some semblance of cultural life.
Exactly. Morale under siege.
But even on the Republican side, there was some serious political vetting. Madrid was a Republican city. Their club, Madrid FC, even had a communist colonel as its wartime president. And yet, they were denied entry to that Mediterranean League.
It's a fascinating wrinkle, isn't it? The sources suggest that the Republican authorities in Valencia and Barcelona may have had a bit of a regional prejudice against the Madrid clubs.
So even though they were on the same side politically, they were still seen as too establishment, too Castilian.
It's possible Madrid FC was caught in the middle, too communist for the nationalists and maybe too central for the regional Republican powers.
Let's talk about that Free Spain Cup, because this is one of the most powerful examples of sporting injustice in Spanish history.
Absolutely. The cup was won by the ultimate underdog, Levante. They only finished 5th in their league, but they got Barcelona's spot after the Blaugrana went on a big tour to Mexico and the U.S.
To raise money.
Right. And Levante beat their rivals Valencia 1-0 in the final. This should have been their crowning glory. It's their only major trophy.
And it was just erased by the new regime. This wasn't just an oversight, was it?
No, it was a clear political statement. The Spanish Football Federation was determined to create a history that only started with the nationalist victory. They refused to recognize anything achieved in the Republican wartime competitions.
So voiding the cup was a way of saying that anything outside the new regime structure was invalid. Institutional erasure.
Precisely. And meanwhile, you had the Euskadi selection, the Basque government's team, acting as this roving political and humanitarian force.
They were remarkable. It was a propaganda tool for the Basque government, but also a humanitarian effort, raising funds for displaced Basque children. They even played 9 matches in the USSR.
And their squad was stacked. You had major Spanish internationals like Luis Reguero and Isidro Longra.
They eventually played in the Mexican League as Club Deportivo Euskadi and finished as runners-up before disbanding. It just shows how star players were forced to become political ambassadors just to survive. And ultimately, the deepest scars of the war were borne by the people, the presidents, the players. By the time the 1939-40 season kicked off, Spanish football was just a landscape of tragedy and political symbolism.
And the symbolism was so overt. The nationalist Spanish team that played against Portugal wore blue jerseys.
The color of the Falange.
Instead of the traditional red, which the regime called the enemy's color. Matches had fascist salutes, pro-Franco slogans. Meanwhile, the Euskadi team wore the red, white, and green of the Basque flag. Every game was a political statement.
Let's talk about the leaders, because this is where the tragedy really hits home. The president of Barcelona, Josep Sunyol, a left-wing politician.
Sunyol was captured and executed by rebel troops in August 1936. His car strayed behind nationalist lines.
The sources suggest it might have been more of a wartime accident than a targeted hit on him as a club president.
Right, it was part of the wave of summary executions happening on both sides. But regardless of the motive, his death turned him into a political martyr for Catalan identity.
And the leaders of Madrid FC suffered just as much, which shows how brutal the conflict was for everyone. Antonio Ortega, the wartime communist president.
He was arrested by the nationalists after the war and executed. It's just incredible that a man who led the club through a siege is so completely gone from their official history.
His name isn't even listed in Real Madrid's presidential records.
Not to this day. A complete institutional erasure.
But the story of the pre-war Real Madrid president, Rafael Sánchez Guerra, a socialist, that story provides a powerful detail that cuts across the political divide.
It really does. He was sentenced to life by the Franco regime, but was amnestied in 1944. Years later, in 1963, he was living in a monastery.
And he was visited there by the current Real Madrid president, Santiago Bernabéu, and the entire legendary team.
Di Stefano, Puskás, all of them. It was this incredible gesture of respect that just transcended the war's ideological fractures.
The players themselves faced hell. We know many were exiled, like the Basque Stars. Others were arrested. Ricardo Zamora, the legendary keeper, was only saved from execution by an anarchist poet.
And others weren't so lucky. Ramon Monchín Triana, a Madrid player, was executed in the mass killings at Paracuellos. And then you had players fighting on opposite sides. Guillermo Gorostiza fought for the nationalists.
While former Madrid player Perico Escobar, a Republican politician, avoided execution 4 separate times before escaping to Cuba.
It sounds like every major club, regardless of their politics, had blood on their hands or their conscience by 1939.
And the ultimate irony is that during the war, when the Republican Sports Battalion formed on the grounds of Madrid FC, one of their companies was named after the murdered Barcelona president, Josep Sunyol.
Former rivals, unified against a common enemy.
That political background sets the stage for the controversy that still defines the league today. The perceived relationship between Real Madrid and Franco.
This is where we have to apply a lot of nuance based on the sources.
The Franco's team narrative. It's a powerful one, especially for Barcelona and athletic club fans, whose clubs suffered direct cultural suppression.
They did. Name changes, flag bans, and they claim Real Madrid benefited unfairly. The biggest piece of evidence they always point to is the transfer of Alfredo Di Stefano in 1953.
For listeners who know the modern rivalry, but maybe not the history, what were the Di Stefano allegations?
The claim is that Real Madrid used high-level political influence to force Di Stefano to sign for them instead of Barcelona. It got very messy, and the Spanish Federation decreed he had to play alternate seasons for each club.
Which is just bizarre.
Right. When Barcelona backed out of that arrangement, Madrid signed him full-time, and that was the turning point for their European domination. Detractors claim the whole thing was orchestrated by the regime.
But the nuance here is crucial. Real Madrid suffered massively during the war itself, and the initial regime favor clearly went to the military-linked Atlético aviation.
Absolutely. Chamartin Stadium was ruined. Their wartime presidents were persecuted or killed by both sides. The idea that Franco created Real Madrid's success is an exaggeration.
So the sources suggest Franco's support came later, because they were successful.
That's it. In the 50s and 60s, when Spain was isolated, the regime needed a polished, successful symbol to project internationally. Real Madrid's European Cups became the perfect propaganda tool.
They fit the role perfectly, especially compared to the, quote, troublesome regional powerhouses in Catalonia and the Basque Country.
Exactly. And that political reset after the war was applied to everyone. The regime voided all the wartime tournaments like the Mediterranean League and the Free Spain Cup.
And they banned foreign club names.
Right. It was part of this nationalist ideology to wipe out foreign influence. So Athletic Club had to become Atlético Club. Racing Santander became Real Santander. This cultural purging affected clubs across the board.
This deep dive into the 1939-40 restart just shows a footballing landscape that was only functional because of, well, mergers, political maneuvering, and a total refusal to acknowledge the wartime results.
The competition resumed, but the scars were deep, and they lasted for decades.
We saw it with the Free Spain Cup. Levante's only title. The RFEF refused to recognize it for over 80 years.
Only finally acknowledging it and handing over the trophy in 2023. And likewise, Madrid FC's communist president, Antonio Ortega, is still unlisted in the club's official history.
The winners, and whose victories count, were decided not just on the pitch, but by central decree.
The sporting records of 1939-40 officially mark the end of the Civil War, but the historical divisions over who was a victim, who was favored, whose victories count, they continue to shape La Liga's greatest rivalries today.
We saw how quickly political forces used, changed, and just erased footballing history.
So the provocative thought we want to leave you with is this. The club identity you see today is built on a series of political decisions about historical legitimacy. What a central truth about a club's soul is irrevocably lost when a regime decides which presidents and which hard-won trophies are officially erased from the history books. And does that erasure truly matter if the fan base never ever forgets?